getting started here, you know, when Kirk told me, hey, you know, can you speak on this, you know, sometime coming up? You know, and I talked to Jen. I said, as soon as I said, yes, I can, because I'm thinking I got all this good things to say, about 30 seconds later after I sent it, the first thing I said is, oh boy, what am I going to say? You know, I don't know what it is, but it just happens. So there I am all day trying to think, oh man, I can't think of anything. And then when I go to bed, I don't know why he does this, maybe because my mind starts to settle down and then I can actually start to think. He starts like a flood and starts dumping all this stuff in my mind. I hardly slept at all that night. And then I've been like holding on to this, you know, and he's going over it with me now since a little over a month. Every night, every morning, on the way to work, while I'm at work, just pouring all these things into my heart, into my head, you know. And then as time starts going closer, and then now, okay, it's the next week, and then Andrew gets up here and starts to speak, and guess what? Andrew touches almost right on the exact same thing that I was going to speak on. It was just so like, man, Andrew. I was just telling him that here at the beginning of worship. But, you know, it was so neat. You know, the Lord already knew all this, so he knows what's going on, and it was so neat. Because he touched on the first part that he originally gave me, then he took away. And he gave me another part to it. So it's just so amazing how he sees these things and how he uses so many different people. Because Andrew can say something in a way that I may not say it. But it's still the heart of Jesus because that's who's in him, right? And now I'm going to be saying something that's just a little bit different, but it's going to be coming from the Lord through me. I like to use the example of, you know, we're all like coffee grounds, right? He's the living water, and as he pours himself through us, whatever flavor you're going to get. Maybe it's a decaf. Maybe it's an espresso, you know, I don't know, latte. But it's how it goes, you know. And each one is a little bit different because everybody responds to something a little bit different, right? And Jesus is trying to reach somebody. And he's just stirring my heart, you know, hey, look, I want you to see that you're hearing from me. He wants Andrew to know. He wants all of us to know. And then the words that were given, the prophecy, or not the prophecy, but the interpretation, the encouragement, all those things just kind of fit right in line. So getting into this, you know, what the Lord showed me, if you could put the first slide up, is the question that is, what is strength and what is normal? Because what he gave to me that night was, he says, George, my body isn't functioning 100%, and I want it to function 100%. I want them to know the true strength that they have. I want them to know what's really normal, because they are so, you know, it's so easy for Satan to blind them. The Lord gave me this, I don't know, a few months ago. I was downstairs Saturday morning worshiping before Jen got up, and the Lord showed me this. That Satan is using things to blind us and to keep us from the reality of understanding it and seeing what we have and who we have in us. And because of that, it's easy to get distracted. And when we talk about in 1 Peter 5:8, I'm not going to put it up. Some of these I'm just going to, for time's sake, because, you know, I got a lot to say and I'm trying to get it all in. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, it says, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. So let's think about that for a second. So if he's, picture yourself in the savannah, you know, in Africa, out there in the savannah. And if you aren't aware of that Satan's coming to get you or the lion's out there, you may walk up to wherever it's easiest for living, right? Next to the water. Because there's water's life, right? And then that means food's going to come there, so you'll have food, right? So as you're standing there and night comes, you say, I'm going to just pop my head up here on a rock and I'm going to go to sleep. But if that lion's out there roaming around, are you protected? Now, physically, we're looking for that danger, right? We're constantly looking for that danger. But the question is, are we spiritually looking for that danger? I mean, we hope that we are, right? We're in church right now, so our mind's thinking spiritual. So, yeah, we're like, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But when we get out there and life starts to hit us right in the face, you know, work, your car breaks down, Your house almost burns on fire, all kinds of things, relationships. Now you got people at work, there's drama, all these things. And before you know it, the smoke and mirrors that Satan's getting out there starts to take your vision away from the reality that the spiritual is the reality. Because see, in the beginning, there was God in the spiritual realm. Then he created earth in us, right? And then when earth and this physical body passes away, what's going to happen? The spiritual realm's going to still go on, and God's going to be there, right? So when you think about it, what is normal? What is real? Is it this stand? I was talking about it earlier. Is it this stand? Or is it something spiritual? I'm throwing that out there because this is what the Lord's telling me. And then he's talking about the strength. If we can go to the next slide. You see when it comes up. All right, can everybody see that? And the reason I picked this one is I'm going to start talking about a little bit about strength, right? Now, if for some reason you have to go out in that alley, in the bad section of town, at 2 in the morning, because you have to be there, who would you want to be there? Right? This guy, right? The Terminator. Because he's physically intimidating, right? I mean, he's got his sunglasses on. He can see at night with sunglasses on. He's packing a gun. He's big. He's strong. You can blow him up. You can put him on fire, and he just doesn't stop. That's the guy I want. The only problem is he likes to say, I'll be back. Wait, don't go nowhere. But if you go to the next slide here, look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, John 1:29. Now, Jesus is strong, right? He's powerful. He's ruler over everything. Owner, like she said, of cattle on 1,000 hills. And how did he come? I know he didn't look like a lamb, but that's his heart. That's how he came. He didn't come to destroy, take names, and tear down the physical strongholds. He came down to tear down the spiritual strongholds. The one that had us in bondage to sin and death. So he came as the lamb. Now, is that normal? Do you think if you were coming to free people of sin and death, you would come as a lamb? To die? To be a sacrifice? Wouldn't you think you would come back as the Terminator and just wipe everybody out? But no, he came back as the lamb because he didn't want one victory. He wanted the victory forever. So he came back as the lamb, which to me, if I was in his shoes, I don't know if that would have been the first idea that I would have came up with, right? But that's what he did. He's starting to reveal to us what is true strength. Sometimes we think strength is, I'm big and strong, I don't mess up, I got all these things, I'm on top of my game, right? That's strength. But you know what I know? Sometimes strength isn't always as it seems. I know Kirk and Ruth have shared a testimony at one time about where, when they were younger, they were eating out of garbage cans. And look where he's at today. Now, if you were driving down the road and you looked at somebody eating out of the garbage cans, would you say, that's going to be him someday, where he's at now? You wouldn't, would you? But the Lord sees strength. And he saw strength in Kirk and Ruth. And because of that, he worked in their lives. And look how many people they've affected and how many people they've touched because of Jesus in their lives. I'm just trying to open these minds. Maybe you already see these things, but this is what the Lord is telling me. So that makes me think that there's somebody out there that needs to hear these things. We need to be stirred up, right? I know Bill Powell likes to talk about, all the healings and the things that the Lord's done to kind of stir himself up. So, this is, even if you're not in that place where you need to hear those things, it's always good to be stirred up, right? To keep the reality fresh to the forefront of your mind. If we can go to the next slide. All right, so in 1 Samuel I believe it was, 17 verses 1 through 58. It's talking about David and Goliath. Just another story about strength, right? What the world sees as strength and what God sees as strength. Now, you look at this picture. This is Robert, I'm going to try this, Wadlow, I believe is his name. The guy on the right here, he has a height of 8 foot and 11 inches. And then you look at a normal-sized man right next to him, right? Pretty big, right? Well, Goliath, they said, was 6 cubits, which is roughly around 9 foot 9 inches. So this guy's only 8 foot 11. That's pretty impressive, right? Now, this is a normal-sized guy, but now let's throw in there a shepherd boy. I put the pictures up here because, like I said, they're worth a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So I'm hoping this is getting a lot of words in that I might be missing. So when you have David, who was a little boy, you know, it doesn't say, I don't know if I remember if it says what age, but, you know, he's probably 12, 13, somewhere in that age. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And he's going up against Goliath. And what I love about that story, he's just like, what are we doing here? Why are we I'm just paraphrasing, why are we letting this guy talk this way? This isn't how it's supposed to be. You know what? I'm going to go. Sign me up. Everybody else is like, no way, not me. That guy is big. But there he is. He's like, I'm him. You know, get out of my way. Part C, I'm coming. And he did. And what's funny is I'm thinking about this story. If I was going to get my weapon, I think I would be getting a bow. But what does he get? A slingshot, right? And then if I was getting that slingshot, I think I would have got a bag and put about 5 dozen rocks in it. But what does he do? He gets only 5. Think about that. That's pretty confident. I only need 5. Well, really, I only need 1, but I'm just going to get a couple extra. You know? So then he gets 5 in his bag. And the first one, he knocks him down. Think about that. What do we think is strength? Because every one of those guys there on that Israelite army, except for David, was looking at Goliath and thinking what was strength was 9 foot 9 inches. But what the Lord saw what was strength was a shepherd boy who knew the truth.
Right. That's good. That's good.
And because of that, he used them.
Right.
Wow. That means I can be used, right? That means you can be used, right? I know I say right a lot, but I'm trying to get a response here. Now let's go to another story here, talking about strength and what's normal. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Peter. And I've just kind of been looking at Peter's life here a little bit, and then the Lord just started showing me something. Let's talk about in Matthew 14, verses 28 through 31, it's going to talk about Peter walking on the water. A lot of people can see it in a lot of different ways. You know, when Jesus walked up to that boat and the storm's going on, he's like, I want to walk out there with him. You didn't hear anybody else saying that. And not only did he said it, he actually did it. But then he sunk. Is that failure or is that strength? And then if you go to the next one here where it's talking in John 18, I believe that's my writing's 10, it's talking about Peter cutting off the ear, you know, the priest's servant. When you think about that, is that failure or is that strength? Yeah, it's not what the Lord wanted to have happen, but his heart was, man, I'm going to do something. I'm going to get out there, you know, because I'm not going to let my Lord be taken. Did you see anybody else doing that? No. Now, Jesus said stop, and he put his ear, you know, healed his ear. But the Lord knows us where we're at. And he knows what we're capable of. And he knows where Peter's heart was. But he also saw that Peter was moving. He stepped out. Now, the next one is in Luke 22, 54 through 62. It's talking about where Peter denies Jesus. Now, when you think of that, do you think of that as strength? Or do you think of it as weakness? How many of the other disciples followed Jesus all the way back there? What kind of risk was he taking at that time? Jesus was just being hauled away to who knows what. Crucified, imprisoned. Instead of running and hiding, he followed him there. Yeah, he did deny him, but he followed him there. Why? Because the Lord saw something in him, and he knew that he was going to do that. And then if you look in Matthew 16, this one I am going to read, 17 through 19. Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Wow, that's Peter. You hear that? We can do the same thing. We can be that same person. What keeps us away from that? Stepping out, right? Believing. The Lord, when we're here, we're at church, it's really good. And we get encouraged, we get pumped up, and then we leave. And then life starts to deal with us, right? It's not easy. It's hard. But what do we have to do? We have to understand who we have in us, which is Jesus. And we need to understand what power he has. Because it's not about us, it's about him. And if we have him in our life, we have that power to be able to walk on water. If we turn to 2 Kings chapter 6, I'm just going to read a couple verses here, out 6 through 7. I don't have this one up on there. And this here is where they're talking about the axe. I'm sure a lot of you already heard this story. But it says, "So the man of God said, 'Where did it fall?' Because the guy was using a borrowed axe, and as he was chopping, the head broke off and fell into the water. So the man of God was asking, 'Where did it fall into the water?' And he showed him the place. So the man of God cut off a stick and threw it in there, and he made the iron float. Therefore he said, 'Pick it up for yourself.' So he reached out his hand and took it." Is that normal? How many here would think that's normal? I question you, is it normal? If we're talking about the spiritual, that's normal. And that was here before, right? It's here during, and it will be here after. So why? He's trying to encourage us to look for those things, to look to those things. Because he has great and mighty things to do. And he technically doesn't need us. He can do them on his own. But he wants us to take part in it. He wants us to be a part of it, right? So he wants us to take a part of everything, which is the spiritual side. So we can start thinking about when he says for that mountain to be moved, that we can see the reality that it can be moved. Physically. And when a bush can burn without being consumed, that becomes the reality. Because see, he wants his whole body to be functioning 100%. He wants you all to be a part, not just a few people. You know, they have, things out there where they do studies, and, I really, it's hard because wherever the study's from, it's kind of can be slighted, right? Depending on the demographics or location or whoever's taking the survey. But I think we can all agree for most part, when you look at the church as a body, does it operate 100%? What do you think is his heart for us? To operate 100%, right? So if you look at my body here, let's just pick a number. Let's say 20%, to say 20%. So let's say this 20% is the only thing that's operating. I wouldn't be standing, would I? How well would I be effective? How well would I survive? What about if it was maybe 40% from my thighs down was working? How long would they last without the other 60%? How effective would it be? Well, some people can live without their arms and their legs, right? But do they need assistance? Do they need help? Every one of us has a part. Every one of us. And that's what he's trying to encourage us today. He wants us to see what our worth is. He wants us to see what he's capable of. He wants us to see the reality of what's real. I know Andrew talked about it last week, but if you look in, I believe here, give me a second. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 12 through 31, it's talking about the bodies, of the different parts and how they're all crucial. The hand, can't function on its own. It needs the nose and the mouth and the eyes and everything else. So when we think about that, and you're sitting out in the pew maybe. I know I was at one time, and I thought, who am I? I'm just George Hill. When I grew up with an Alliance address, but I didn't even belong to Alliance. We were outside of Alliance City District, we were closer to Sebring. But I didn't even go to Sebring either. I went to West Branch. Go figure, I don't know. It was like a man without a home, I don't know. But who am I? As Andrew was saying last week, I'm wonderfully created, He knitted me together. He knows every cell. Why? Because he has a purpose for us. It's in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. It says, "For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good work, which God prepared in advance as our way of life." What? You mean my way of life is not going to where I go to work every day? You mean my way of life is not remodeling my house that seems to never end? What? Wow. So what's real? What's normal? What is strength? What is not? Well, if I have Jesus in my life, I have him. And we already talked about what he can do, right? He is all-powerful. And if he's in me, what does that make me? Because of who is in me, right? All I have to do is walk and be obedient. So when you are sitting there and you're going about your life, what I'm trying to encourage, what the Lord showed me, is to start stirring yourself up in what is real and what is strength. Because, again, he's roaming around looking for who he can devour. And if you're not consciously understanding the strength that you have in you and the reality of what's really real, you might be sitting on the savannah underneath the stars with your both eyes closed, and the lion could be coming right up behind you, and you never know. If you go to, I believe it's the next slide. So when you look at here, you got a carpenter, a fisherman, and a tax collector. Think about what's normal and what's strength. If you were getting ready to start a ministry that's going to reach all ends of the earth, would this be the group that you would pick? Or would you be going to the biggest and prettiest mosque or church or to the kings and picking the best of the best, right? Is what you thought. But Jesus, he took fishermen. He took tax collectors. That's pretty amazing. That means I got hope. That's pretty good. You know, because growing up with an alcoholic father, you know, you don't have a whole lot of hope sometimes. So you got to have something to hope in. And here, I can be used. I am not a carpenter by trade or a fisherman by trade, but I don't think that was the heart. I think it was the people in their heart. So that means if I have a heart to serve him and to be obedient and to walk, no matter what it is, I can be used just like them. And I can help the spread of the gospel to the ends of the earth. That's pretty good. I like to go, if you want to turn there as well, I'm going to Exodus chapter 4. I'm going to read 10 through 12. It says, "Then Moses said to the Lord, 'O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue.' So the Lord said to him, 'Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Have I not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth, and teach you what you shall say.'" Wow. As I started out and I was talking about, you know, that train wreck of getting up here when I was in my teenager years. So if I would have stuck with that mentality till now, would I be here today, standing here? But over the course of my years of life, I started walking in the things that the Lord has given me. And I probably could have got here faster, but I didn't. But what happened is, I remember I started teaching Sunday school when my kids became of age. And I went into that first Sunday school, I'm thinking, I'm doing 7 to 12 years old. Not a big deal, right? I know more than them. How bad could it be? And after the first Sunday school was over, one of the kids, you know, got to love their hearts. They're just honest. And they're like, "When is our other teacher coming back?" Wow. Not coming back. You got me for 8 months. But what that stirred my heart is I got to step my game up, right? I got to press in a little bit more. And I did. And by the end of it, the kids were really engaged and having a good time. But if I didn't press in and I didn't move forward, if I didn't step out. I love it when Moses from Kenya was up here and he said, "Hey, you know, don't wait to start walking in what you got." That just, you know, even though I already knew that, and I've probably heard it a million times, it finally impacted my life, and it was like, whoosh, opened right up, and I just understood it. I've already been doing this. Man, I just need to see it and do it a little bit more. So that's what I started doing. I started walking in more. So a little while longer, I started doing Bible studies at my house. Now I'm dealing with adults. that could know more than me. More than likely, they do know more than me. And here I am walking. And let me tell you, it was rough in the beginning. I'm sure the people that come there were thinking, we're doing this for you, Lord. Helping George out. I appreciate it. Thank you. But I kept going forward. And let me tell you, there was some times where only one person showed up. You know how discouraging that can be? When you're not really comfortable doing it, and you're really out of your comfort zone, and then only one person shows up. You know, I had to deal with my heart at that time, but it's part of growing. It's part of getting to where we need to go. But I didn't stop there. You know, this spring, Jason Armstrong, I love him. You know, he's got a great heart. And he says, hey, I got these guys that want to get together as couples and you know, but I don't have anything. He says, and I said, oh, that's great. I said, maybe we can do something together. And he's like, yeah, I'll host it, and you can come over. All right, but you're going to help too. And let me tell you, it's just been something different this time. But that's just the Lord adding to. I'm being faithful with what He's given me, and now He's adding to it. But it wouldn't happen if I didn't walk forward. If I didn't step out. It wouldn't happen, would it? So let's go to the next slide. This is the verse if you're going to be able to follow around with. This, to me, is something that these verses here I cherish a lot because there's so much good in it to me. Not that any of the other things aren't good, but it's just like it shows you the blessing, and it also shows you something to chase in your heart to make you stay active. So let's kind of read through this. In Matthew 25:14 through 30, it says, again, it will be like a man going on a journey. He called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one, he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. Does that sound familiar? Jesus was here, right? Isn't he the master? Aren't I the servant? Didn't he go on a journey? Isn't he coming back someday? And he's given me something. Wherever I fall in the line, 5, 2, 1, he's given me something. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the masters of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. Now that's a blessing, right? So isn't that exciting? You've gained 5 more. Now he's saying, come and share. It's not like, good job, now go back to work. He's saying, come and share in it with his happiness. And not only that, I'm going to give you more. Then the man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you have entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. So wait, what? I thought that was only for the guy that had 5 bags. You mean if I only bring 2, I get the same reward? To share in his happiness and to be given more? Wow, that's pretty good. Because, sometimes we might think it's only for certain people, right? I'm just a nobody in the back. Or not saying that people in the back are nobodies or anything like that. But you get the reference. Then we have the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I know that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not set a scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvested where I have not sown and gathered where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money in deposit with the banker so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. What? You mean I gave you back what you had? What's going on? It says in Matthew chapter 7, verses 21 through 23, it's talking about there will be a day when there's people who are going to say, Lord, Lord, look what I've done for you. And what is he going to say to them? I don't know who you are. Go away. Wow, it's pretty strong. Let me continue on here. Verse 29. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have in abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside. So that means if you're being thrown outside, you were where? Inside, right? Into the darkness. So if you're going into the darkness, that means you came from... All right, I'm glad we're on the same page. Where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like Motel 8. And Tom Bodette's not leaving the light on for you. That's pretty rough. Think about it. So what I like about these scriptures is it tells me if I'm active and I do something, I'm going to get to reap more. And he's going to share with me, even though I don't deserve it, because I'm just a servant. That's pretty wild. But it also chastens after me that I can't just stay lukewarm. That I have to be actively pursuing him. I got to keep going because I'm part of his body. And what did he tell us? I'm trying to see if I can find it here. Mark chapter 16, verses 15, he says, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. So he's given me something to do. How many here can speak? All right, only about 20% of our church. So if we can all speak, we can all tell our testimony, right? I love the story where Paul was telling, I think it was to King Agrippa, his testimony. He was being drugged there because they were looking at trying to kill him, and throw him in prison. Instead of talking about his defense, about how he wasn't doing whatever and how he's not wrong, he just starts sharing his testimony. He just starts telling, hey, this is what the Lord's done for me. And in the midst of that, I love this part, that the king has said, whoa, wait, stop. You're almost convincing me. Now, do you think it was Paul or who lived in those words that was the one who was affecting that king's heart? So it doesn't matter whether the Lord showed up onto you on the path to wherever and blinded you, or if it's just, he just made a subtle change in your heart and now you see the reality. what's powerful about whatever you say when you're talking about what the Lord has given you is the Lord itself, Jesus. We can all say those things, right? We can all do those things. Every one of us. And some people's hearts will be affected by you, not because of the words that you're saying, but because of the Lord who's tugging at their hearts. I'm almost done here. Another one is in Matthew 17, and it starts in 24 and goes through 27. And this is where Peter and Jesus were going to a place, I can't remember where, and you can read it afterwards, and they were being challenged about paying a tax. And you know what Jesus said? He said, hey, go out and let down, cast your pole in, and the first fish you bring out, pull out of his mouth a coin, and that'll be, our tax for you and me. I don't know about you, but that would be nice to be able to pay my taxes that way. Anybody here pay their taxes that way? Seems like it's out of the normal, right? Just another way to show you that the spiritual is the normal. Just another way to show you that his strength and what he can do. Think about it. The very first fish. I've fished, and I don't like to fish, but there's probably people here that fish more than me. How many of you have pulled out any money out of a fish? Anybody? Anybody? No one? Wow. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? If we can go ahead and skip to the last slide. I'd like to tell you that the road is always going to be rosy and butterflies and 70 and sunny. But it's not. Those same guys that he picked out, the fishermen, the tax collectors, as they went out just talking about Jesus, you look at this, I don't know if you can see it, but look at it. James, he's stabbed with a sword. Another James, he was stoned to death. Thomas was thrust with a spear. Philip was crucified by soldiers. Paul was beheaded in Rome. Peter was crucified upside down. There's only one here that died of old age. All the rest of them, something happened to them. What takes a fisherman, a tax collector, and makes them want to do that? To sell everything, drop it, go, and meet that kind of end. And Peter, just like he was in those other verses, he said, I didn't want to be crucified right side up like my Lord, and he had himself turned upside down. How many here would, you're at that grisly end, how many would think, yeah, I'm going to kind of tell them how I want done because, you wouldn't. You'd just be so overwhelmed with your circumstances, right? But what does that to somebody? Somebody who understands the true reality of what's normal and the person who knows what strength they have. Because when you think about having to go through something like that, do we have that strength? Not by ourselves. But if we have Jesus with us, we can overcome. And if we have him in our life and we're constantly pressing into him, we're going to see the reality of what's real and knowing this is only a moment. And the eternity's coming and it's going to be great. So I'm not trying to beat you up or anything like that. Not at all. The Lord put this on his heart because he wants to stir your heart. He wants you to see the reality. And you wonder, why does he want to do that? Because he wants you to take part in it. He wants to share it with you. He doesn't want to see anyone lost. He will leave the 99 to go after the one and take it from the lion's mouth and bring it back. That's what he does, because that's what he wants for you. Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? When you think about that, doesn't that stir your heart to say, man, I guess talking to my neighbor isn't that bad after all, is it? It's the least I could do. So I just want to stir your hearts, chasing after him, to understand what your strength is and to understand what is normal. To open your eyes, to look to the spiritual. Let me pray and dismiss, but I want